Lyrics awoke with a jolt, hand immediately reaching for her weapon. 8 hours had passed, longer than she'd intended to rest. The sun was high overhead, filtering through the forest canopy in dappled patterns. Her internal chronometer confirmed she'd slept deeply, something that rarely happened even in secure Imperial quarters. Nikolai sat by a freshly built fire, fashioning something from wood with a small knife. He didn't look up as she stirred, but she knew he was aware of her every movement. "Your Empire made contact," he said casually, continuing his carving. Panic surged through Lyrics. She checked her communicator, inactive, as expected. "Impossible. You disabled my beacon." "Not your beacon. Your retrieval team." Now he looked up, his eyes steady. "Standard Imperial protocol, if an elite hunter doesn't report within 24 hours, send a scout ship." Lyric stood, scanning the sky. "Where?" "They landed about 10 kilometers east. 3 soldiers. Standard scout configuration." He returned to his carving. "They'll be here by nightfall unless they're particularly incompetent." Her mind raced. A retrieval team meant the mission was still active. She could rejoin Imperial forces, complete her objective. Yet something felt wrong. "How do you know Imperial protocols?" she demanded. "I told you, I've had many teachers." His knife made precise, controlled cuts into the wood. Including several former Imperial officers who questioned their orders once too often. Defectors. The word burned in her mind. The ultimate disgrace in the Empire. Those who abandoned their duty were hunted down and executed publicly, their families often disappearing into labor camps. "If what you say is true," she said carefully, "I should prepare to rendezvous with them." "You could," Nikolai agreed. "Or you could ask yourself why they didn't respond to your previous communications." Lyrics froze. "I sent no communications." "Exactly." He looked up, his expression grave. "Your armor sends automated status updates every 6 hours. Standard Imperial procedure. Even with the main beacon disabled, the secondary systems would have transmitted basic telemetry." She hadn't considered that. Her armor's redundancies should indeed have sent minimal data packets: location, life signs, mission status. "They knew you engaged me," Nikolai continued. "They knew you survived. Yet they sent a retrieval team instead of reinforcements." He set his carving aside. "Why do you think that is?" The question hung in the air between them. Lyrics wanted to dismiss it as more manipulation, but logic prevented her. A retrieval team made no sense for an active capture mission. Unless the mission parameters had changed. "You're suggesting they're coming to eliminate me," she said flatly. "I'm suggesting you consider the possibility." He stood, brushing wood shavings from his clothes. "The Empire doesn't tolerate failure, does it? Especially not from its exemplars." Memories surfaced unbidden. General Vorix, once celebrated, now a cautionary tale whispered among recruits. Commander Zhen, who returned from a mission without her target and disappeared the next day. Even her own mentor, Marshal Crixus, who questioned a planetary bombardment order and was found dead from training accidents shortly after. "I've served the Empire faithfully for 17 cycles," she said, but uncertainty had crept into her voice. "And in all that time, have you ever seen someone fail and return to their former glory?" Nikolai asked gently. She hadn't. The realization settled coldly in her stomach. "What do you suggest?" she asked finally, surprising herself with the question. "That depends on what you want," he replied. "I want." She began, then stopped. What did she want? To complete her mission? To return triumphant? These were the only wants she'd ever allowed herself. "Let me show you something," Nikolai said, picking up his staff. "Then you can decide." Against her better judgment, Lyrics followed him deeper into the forest. They walked in silence for nearly an hour before reaching a small ridge overlooking a valley. There, nestled among the trees, was a settlement, not a temporary camp, but permanent structures. Dozens of beings moved about, some human, others distinctly not. "What is this place?" she asked. "A beginning," Nikolai answered. "People who've chosen a different path. Former soldiers, refugees, even some imperial citizens who escaped conscription." Lyric stared in disbelief. The settlement should not exist. Imperial scanners would have detected it. Unless the valley's mineral composition blocks most scanning frequencies, Nikolai explained, reading her thoughts. "And we have other protections in place." "We?" she questioned sharply. He smiled slightly. "I help where I can." Lyric studied the settlement more carefully. The structures were simple but efficient. Gardens provided food. A small stream offered water. But most striking was the interaction between the inhabitants. No hierarchy was immediately apparent, no uniforms or insignia denoting rank or position. "How do they function without proper command structure?" she asked. "They cooperate," Nikolai said simply. "Each contributes according to their abilities. Decisions affecting everyone are made collectively." "Chaos," she muttered, but there was no chaos visible below. Only purpose. Community. Freedom, he corrected. The thing the Empire fears most. They watched in silence for several minutes. Lyrics noticed a group of children, mixed species, playing together near the stream. Their laughter carried faintly up the ridge. "When was the last time you heard a child laugh in an imperial settlement?" Nikolai asked quietly. She couldn't answer. Children in the Empire were resources to be developed, not individuals to nurture. They were separated by aptitude at age 5, their paths determined by imperial need. Laughter was inefficient. "The Empire told you it brings order and progress," Nikolai continued. "But all it really brings is control and fear." "You speak of treason," she said, but the word sounded hollow even to her. "I speak of truth. And deep down, you know it." He turned to face her fully. "You felt it your entire life, that something was wrong. That's why you're the best, Lyrics. You thought if you were perfect, if you never failed, the emptiness would go away." His words struck with devastating accuracy. The void she'd carried within her since childhood, that hollow feeling no victory ever filled, seemed to expand in her chest. "The retrieval team will be here soon," he said gently. "You need to decide who you are. The Empire's weapon, or something more." "If what you say is true, they'll kill me regardless of my decision," she replied bitterly. "Not if they can't find you." He gestured toward the settlement. "You could disappear. Start again." The concept was so foreign, so impossible, that Lyrics nearly laughed. Disappear? She was Commander Lyrics, elite hunter of the 3rd Imperial Fleet. Her genetic profile was in Imperial databases. Her neural implants tracked her vital signs. She couldn't simply vanish. And yet, as she watched the settlement below, something stirred within her. Something she'd suppressed for so long she barely recognized it. Hope. "I need to think," she said finally. Nikolai nodded. "We should head back. I have preparations to make if Imperial forces are coming." As they walked, Lyrics' mind raced through possibilities, contingencies, outcomes. Training demanded she complete her mission. Logic suggested Nikolai might be right about the retrieval team's true purpose. But beneath both, something else pulled at her, the image of those children laughing by the stream. Children who had something she never did, choice. By the time they reached the camp, Lyrics had made her decision. She would wait, observe the retrieval team's approach, assess their intentions. If Nikolai was wrong, she would complete her mission. If he was right. She looked at the human who had defeated her twice yet spared her life. The enemy who offered her tea and showed her truth. "They're coming," he said suddenly, head tilted as if listening to something she couldn't hear. 3 signatures moving fast through the forest. They'll be here in minutes. Lyrix's hand moved to her weapon. How can you know that? He tapped his ear. The settlement maintains a perimeter. They've informed me. No time left for deliberation. The moment of choice had arrived. What will you do? Nikolai asked, his voice calm despite the danger approaching. Lyrix looked toward the direction of the oncoming soldiers, then back at Nikolai. In his eyes, she saw something no Imperial officer had ever shown her: respect. Not for her rank or her skills, but for her as a being capable of choice. In that moment, Commander Lyrix, elite hunter, pride of the Empire, undefeated warrior, made the first truly free decision of her life. The hunter's pride. Commander Lyrix stepped onto Earth's soil with cold determination in her veins. The dirt crunched beneath her armored boots as she surveyed the dense forest before her. Her silver-blue skin reflected the sunlight filtering through the trees, scales along her arms shimmering with each movement. She was the pride of the Vexen Empire, undefeated, unwavering, and utterly loyal. Her mission was simple: find the human named Nikolai Heron. Capture him. Break him. The thought made her mandibles click with anticipation. The human had become something of a legend, a thorn in the Empire's side. 3 Imperial scouts had failed to return from missions to apprehend him. Then, most unthinkably, he had defeated General Vorix in single combat, let him live, and sent him back to the Empire in disgrace. Such insolence could not stand. Lyrix moved through the forest silently, her enhanced senses detecting traces that normal hunters would miss. A bent twig here. A faint footprint there. The human was good, better than she expected, but no prey escaped Lyrix. She had hunted criminals across 17 star systems. She had brought down beasts on worlds where the atmosphere itself could kill. One human would not be difficult. As night fell on her second day of tracking, Lyrix detected smoke. Not from a careless fire, but the faintest trace carried on the wind. Most wouldn't notice, but her sensory membranes were finely tuned for such subtleties. She approached with perfect stealth, her cloaking suit rendering her nearly invisible. The camp came into view, small, efficient, with minimal equipment. A simple shelter made of locally sourced materials. A small fire, carefully constructed to produce minimal smoke. The setup spoke of discipline and experience. And there, seated calmly by the fire, was her target. Nikolai Heron looked nothing like the monster described in Imperial briefings. He wasn't large or imposing. His frame was lean, muscular but not bulky. Dark hair tied back from his weathered face. He wore simple clothing, practical garments suited for survival. No weapons were visible, though Lyrix knew better than to assume he was unarmed. Most striking was his posture. He sat cross-legged, eyes closed, hands resting on his knees. Meditation. Unusual for a supposed savage. Lyrix drew her plasma blade silently. One quick strike and her mission would be complete. She tensed, preparing to spring from the shadows. You might as well join me, the human said without opening his eyes. I've been expecting you for hours. Lyrix froze. Impossible. No one detected her when she hunted. Her cloaking technology was unmatched. You're breathing, he continued, finally opening his eyes and looking directly at where she stood hidden. It's too rhythmic. Too controlled. Nature is chaotic. You stand out in the chaos. Rage flickered through Lyrix's mind. She deactivated her cloak, stepping into the firelight with her weapon drawn. Nikolai Heron. By the authority of the Vexen Empire, you are to surrender immediately. The human didn't stand. Didn't reach for a weapon. He simply looked at her with curious brown eyes. Would you like some tea first? It's been a long journey. The casual dismissal of her authority made Lyrix's blood boil. You mock me? Not at all, he said, reaching for a small pot beside the fire. I'm being hospitable. Your empire doesn't teach much about hospitality, does it? Lyric stepped forward, blade humming with energy. You will stand and submit to restraints. Now. Nikolai sighed, setting the pot down. I had hoped for civil conversation, but I see you're determined to follow orders. He rose slowly, his movements fluid and unhurried. What's your name? My designation is Commander Lyrics, elite hunter of the 3rd Imperial Fleet. Not your title, he said. Your name. That is irrelevant to this encounter. A sad smile crossed his face. They really did strip everything from you, didn't they? His words struck her like a physical blow. She snarled and lunged forward, blade sweeping in a perfect arc toward his neck, a move that had ended countless lives. But Nikolai wasn't there. He moved with impossible speed, sliding past her strike as though he'd seen it coming hours ago. His hand touched her wrist, redirecting her momentum. Lyrics found herself off balance, stumbling forward. She recovered quickly, spinning with another strike. Again, he wasn't where he should be. He moved like water around stone, never directly opposing her force but channeling it away. The Empire has filled your head with lies, he said as he dodged another strike. They told you I was dangerous, didn't they? Lyrics attacked again, faster this time. Her blade sliced through the air where his chest had been a millisecond earlier. You are an enemy of the Empire. That is all I need to know. Did they tell you what I did? Why I'm hunted? He blocked her next attack with a metal staff that seemed to appear from nowhere. The plasma blade sizzled against it but didn't cut through. Irrelevant, she hissed, launching a flurry of strikes. I taught people to think for themselves, he said between blocks. I showed Imperial citizens that they had value beyond servitude. Lyrics increased her speed, drawing on combat techniques that had overwhelmed countless opponents. Yet Nikolai matched her, move for move, never attacking, only defending. You are lying, she snarled, frustration mounting. You are a terrorist. A killer. Is that what they told you? He asked, his voice calm despite the deadly dance. Ask yourself, why send their best hunter alone? Why not an army if I'm so dangerous? His words distracted her for just a moment, a momentary lapse in concentration. It was enough. He swept her legs from under her, and she crashed to the ground. Before she could rise, the end of his staff rested lightly against her throat. Lyrics waited for the killing blow. It never came. Instead, Nikolai stepped back and lowered his weapon. I don't want to fight you, Commander. I never wanted to fight anyone from the Empire. Lyrics leapt to her feet, rage and confusion warring within her. Then surrender. I can't do that. Then I will take you by force. She attacked again, pushing herself to her limits. Her blade became a blur, her movements faster than most eyes could follow. But still, Nikolai evaded. Not perfectly, she managed to slice his arm, drawing blood, but he remained standing, untaken. Finally, breathing hard, Lyrics paused. This was not going as planned. No prey had ever lasted this long against her. Why don't you attack? She demanded. You merely defend. Because I don't need to defeat you, he replied simply. I only need you to listen. Listen to what? More lies. Nikolai shook his head. To the question you're afraid to ask yourself, why would the Empire send its best hunter on what they know is a suicide mission? Lyrics stared at him, mandibles clicking in agitation. You overestimate yourself, human. Do I? He sheathed his staff on his back. Or did they send you here to die so they could tell everyone how dangerous I am? How even the great Commander Lyrics fell before me? The Empire values me, she snarled. The Empire values obedience, he corrected gently. And you've begun to ask questions, haven't you? Small ones. Doubts you push away. Lyrics faltered, her blade lowering slightly. How could he know? Rest, Nikolai said, gesturing to the fire. Think. I won't run. Tomorrow, if you still wish to take me prisoner, we can continue this dance. With that, he turned his back on her, the ultimate insult, or perhaps the ultimate show of trust, and returned to his place by the fire. Lyric stood frozen, anger and confusion roiling within her. No one had ever defeated her. No one had ever shown her mercy. Yet here she stood, unharmed, pride wounded but body intact, watching as the most wanted criminal in the Empire calmly poured a cup of tea. For the first time in her life, Commander Lyrics didn't know what to do next. Retry KB. Lyrics retreated to the forest's edge, close enough to monitor Nikolai but far enough to collect her thoughts. The night air chilled her scales, a sensation she normally wouldn't notice, but tonight every nerve ending seemed hypersensitive. She'd never failed a mission before, especially not on the first engagement. She activated her wrist communicator, intending to request extraction or reinforcements. Her finger hovered over the transmit button, then paused. Something held her back. The human's words echoed in her mind. Why would the Empire send its best hunter on what they know is a suicide mission? A ridiculous notion. She was Commander Lyrics, the most decorated hunter in the Vexen fleet. Her record was flawless, her loyalty unquestioned. Until recently. She recalled her last mission briefing with Admiral Zethrax. His cold eyes had studied her as he outlined the mission parameters. Bring the human back alive if possible, he had said. But if not, confirmation of termination will suffice. At the time, it seemed standard. Now, she wondered why the Admiral hadn't emphasized capture more strongly. The Empire always preferred public trials and executions for enemies of significance. Lyrics shook her head sharply. These thoughts were dangerous, bordering on insubordination. The human was playing mind games, trying to create doubt. A clever tactic, but she wouldn't fall for it. She lowered her communicator without transmitting. No need for reinforcements. She would handle this herself. Dawn broke with misty tendrils creeping through the trees. Lyrics had not slept. Vexen warriors could go 5 days without rest when necessary, though their performance began to degrade after 3. She watched as Nikolai emerged from his shelter, moving through a series of fluid motions, some kind of physical discipline or combat training. His movements were precise, economical. Nothing wasted. She recognized elements of various martial forms from across the galaxy, seamlessly integrated into something unique. This was not the random skill of a lucky fighter. This was mastery. When he finished, he looked directly at her hiding spot. Breakfast, he called out. Lyric stepped from the shadows, her pride stung that he detected her again. I don't require sustenance at this time. Not about requirement, he said, placing a small pot over his rekindled fire. About choice. That word again. Choice. As if it mattered. Duty was what mattered. Purpose. The Empire. She approached cautiously, weapon ready but not activated. Your combat style, it contains elements of Geronian flow fighting and Kenthian pressure points. Among others, he nodded. I've had many teachers. How does a human come to learn alien combat techniques? Nikolai stirred whatever was cooking in the pot. I traveled extensively before the Empire expanded to this sector. Learned what I could, where I could. To use against the Empire, she stated flatly. To understand the universe, he corrected. Fighting was never my goal. Lyrics's mandibles clicked in disbelief. Yet you defeated General Vorix in single combat. I defended myself, Nikolai said quietly. There's a difference. You humiliated him. Sent him back broken. For the first time, a flash of anger crossed Nikolai's face. I treated his wounds and let him live. The Empire broke him for failing, not me. The certainty in his voice gave Lyrics pause. Was it possible? The official report had stated that Voryx returned badly injured, his defeat a disgrace to the Empire. You don't believe me, Nikolai observed, his expression softening. That's okay. Doubt is the beginning of wisdom. Doubt is the beginning of failure, Lyrics countered automatically, reciting her training. Is that what they taught you? He removed the pot from the fire and poured steaming liquid into 2 crude cups. Along with, the Empire values me. Anger flared in Lyrics's chest. She ignited her blade, the plasma humming with deadly energy. Enough mind games. You will come with me now, or I will take you by force. Nikolai set down the cups and stood slowly. If that's your choice. This time, she didn't hold back. Lyrics attacked with everything she had, her blade a blur of lethal light. She employed combat patterns designed to overwhelm, to create openings by sheer speed and ferocity. Nikolai defended with his staff again, the metal somehow resisting her blade. He blocked and evaded, never attacking but never yielding ground either. Minutes passed in a deadly dance around the clearing. Lyrics grew frustrated. Every technique she employed, he seemed to anticipate. She'd been trained in 17 different combat styles, yet none seemed to surprise him. You can't win this way, he said during a momentary pause, both of them breathing hard. You're fighting to defeat me. I'm fighting to understand you. You understand nothing, she snarled, launching another attack. This time, Nikolai changed tactics. Instead of purely defending, he began to counter. Not with strikes meant to harm, but with light touches, fingers brushing pressure points, the edge of his staff tapping nerve clusters. Lyrics's left arm went numb. Then her right leg buckled briefly. Her reflexes slowed as he systematically disrupted her nervous system with precise, temporary strikes. Finally, he swept her remaining leg and she fell hard to the ground. Before she could recover, his staff pressed gently against her throat. Now, he said calmly, we can talk. Fury and humiliation burned through Lyrics. Kill me then, she hissed. Finish what you started. I told you, I'm not here to kill anyone. He removed his staff and stepped back. You're an incredible fighter, Lyrics. Possibly the best I've encountered from the Empire. But you fight with chains around your mind. She rose to her feet, muscles trembling with exertion and anger. The Empire gives me purpose. Direction. What do you have? A hut in the woods? A life of running? I have freedom, he replied simply. Something you've never tasted. The word struck her like a physical blow. Freedom. A concept the Empire taught was synonymous with chaos, with weakness. Your freedom means nothing, she spat. The galaxy needs order. Order and control are different things, Nikolai said, retrieving the cups he'd set aside. He offered one to her. The Empire doesn't bring order. It brings subjugation. Lyrics didn't take the cup. You know nothing of the Empire's glory. I know more than you think. He sipped from his cup. I was there when the Empire first came to the Procyon system. I saw what glory meant for those worlds. Something in his tone made Lyrics hesitate. You lie. The Empire landed on Procyon 4 with 60 warships, he continued as if she hadn't spoken. The planetary government surrendered immediately. No resistance. Do you know what happened next? Lyrics remained silent. Procyon was before her time in active service. The Empire executed every government official anyway. Said it was to prevent future uprising. 10,000 civilians died that day. His eyes held hers. I was there as a diplomatic aide. I watched children murdered in front of their parents. Necessary sacrifices for galactic stability, Lyrics replied, but her voice lacked conviction. Is that what they told you? Nikolai shook his head. Look into the Empire's history, Commander. Look at what happens to worlds that surrender peacefully versus those that resist. The pattern is clear, the Empire respects only strength. Lyrics turned away, unable to meet his gaze. The Empire's tactics were not her concern. She followed orders. That was her duty. You're tired, Nikolai observed. You haven't slept. Vexen warriors don't require. Everyone requires rest, he interrupted gently. Even the most elite hunter in the Empire. Your reflexes are already slowing. He was right, though she hated to admit it. Her performance was degrading. Rest, he said. I'll still be here. You expect me to sleep while you could escape, she scoffed. If I wanted to escape, I would have done so last night. He gestured to her armor. Besides, I disabled your tracking beacon during our fight. If I leave, the Empire won't know where to find me. Shock rippled through Lyrics. She quickly checked her systems. He was right, the beacon was disabled, its circuitry fried by a precise electrical pulse. When had he done that? Rest, he repeated. When you wake, we can continue our discussion. Lyrics retreated to the edge of the clearing, her mind racing. She should attack again. She should find a way to communicate with the Empire. She should not be considering the words of an enemy. Yet, as exhaustion overtook her, one thought remained: in 2 confrontations, Nikolai could have killed her easily. Instead, he offered her tea. For the first time in her life, Commander Lyrics slept in the presence of an enemy, her dreams filled with questions she'd never allowed herself to ask.